Should I be investing? How much should I have in my savings? Should I be spending this much on rent? Hello. We will answer all of those questions and more. But first, I'm Kimmy. I'm 29, living in New York City and working in consulting. And welcome to On Our Way, a channel where we talk about navigating careers through the lens of being women. Today, we're diving into personal finances for all the non-finance girls out there by a non-finance girl herself. I'll go through where I keep my money, including how I divvy up my paychecks and annual bonus. This is an area that used to intimidate me a lot and frankly still does at times, so I want to be as transparent as possible to help build all of our confidence. Now, keep in mind, I work a corporate job where I get a set paycheck every 2 weeks and I get an annual bonus. I've also linked all of the resources that I'll mention in the description below. Lastly, this is not professional financial advice. This is just what has worked for me, and I don't think enough of us girls talk about it. So buckle up because we are on our way to building confidence with your personal finances. Now, I'm in consulting, so you know I came prepared today with some visuals. Starting off, this pie shows where I keep literally all of the money to my name. You can see over here that retirement is 57% of my net worth. 25% are in investments, and the rest, 18%, are in cash equivalents. So starting off with retirement, I have it broken up between my 401k and my Roth IRA. And most of my retirement is in a 401k, which is a pre-tax retirement account, meaning you put money in before it is taxed, and it isn't taxed until you go to withdraw it. And you can't withdraw money from your 401k until you're 59 and a half. However, if you need to pull it out, you can. There'll just be some penalties. Now, most employers, again, coming from a corporate background, will match some, if not all, of your contributions to that account. So you're basically getting free money from your employer to save for retirement. More on that later. There are some contribution limits in place for 401ks, meaning for 2024, you can't contribute more than $23,000. Now, the remaining part of my retirement, as you'll see, is in a Roth IRA, which differs from a 401k in that your employer does not contribute, and you put money in after it has been taxed. But the gains in income grow tax-free. So when you take the money out of a Roth IRA, you do not get taxed on those gains. Similar to a 401k, there are some annual contribution limits. For 2024, you can't contribute more than $7,000 to a Roth IRA. Also similar to a 401k, you can't pull your money out until you're 59 and a half. With both a 401k and a Roth IRA, once your money is in those accounts, you need to invest it accordingly. Typically, in your 401k, you can only invest in mutual funds and exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, which we'll get into, meaning you can't invest in individual company stock like Apple or Amazon. On the other hand, a Roth IRA, you can invest in all of that as well as individual company stocks. I have all of my 401k in a target date fund, which is designed to mature by a certain year. For instance, if you plan to retire in around 2060, like myself, I'll be working for a while. There's a certain fund that corresponds with that. It starts off riskier with investments and then gets less risky as that date approaches. In my Roth IRA, I have about half in a target fund and then the other half in ETFs, or exchange traded funds. And these ETFs, or exchange traded funds, basically hold a basket of stocks. You can buy shares of an ETF that, for instance, tracks the S&P 500, which is a stock market index that tracks the largest 500 companies. So rather than buy a share of a particular individual company, you can buy a share of an ETF that's made up of a lot of different companies. And that makes it typically less risky and less volatile than stocks of a singular company. One ETF in particular that has worked for me so far is VOO, VOO, but you should do your research on any others that fit your interest and your risk appetite. ETFs also are a little less work from a research perspective, so you non-finance girls, I got you. And anything I invest in for my retirement are long-term plays, since I won't be accessing them for a long time. I will say typically your employer only will offer a 401k. However, it's really easy to open up another retirement account like a Roth IRA. And you can do that through Fidelity, Vanguard, Merrill Lynch, the list goes on. And I will note, for a Roth IRA, there are some income limits. So if you make over a certain amount, you can't invest in it or contribute in the traditional way. So it's really to your advantage to invest in these options while you can before you hit that income limit. Now, if you're sitting there wondering, how much should I have set aside for retirement? I'll give you the consulting answer of it depends. However, they say that a good rule of thumb is to have your annual salary set aside by the time you turn 30. So if you make $80,000, aim to have $80,000 set aside by the time that you turn 30 years old. Now I'll go into investments, which as you can see is about 25% of my total pie. Overall, investing basically helps keep your dollar safe from inflation. So in 2023, with high interest rates, the dollar lost 4% purchasing power. Just let that sink in for a second. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 that we mentioned earlier returns on average of 10% annually and has for the past 30 years. By having your money deployed in investments or bonds or high yield savings, all of which we'll get into, you can have your dollar keep up with inflation, if not beat it and make you money. Now, 21% of my total is in equities in a personal brokerage account. Similar to those ETFs that I have in my retirement account that we talked about, here I have them just with a shorter time horizon, since I most likely will be selling those sooner for big purchases like a down payment, a car, and so on. Now, a smaller section, 4% of my total pie, I have in treasury bonds. Now, there are some key differences between stocks or ETFs and bonds that we'll get into. Stocks and ETFs are you purchasing equity in a publicly traded company. Therefore, a company's growth and performance directly affects the value of your stock and or ETF. Bonds, on the other hand, are essentially a loan to a company, or in my case, the US government. You receive a note that basically is a promise that they'll pay you back for your principal, which is the amount that you purchased the bond for, as well as pay you on a predetermined interest rate on that principal amount. The key difference is, unless a company or the US government defaults on their loans, there's a contractual rate of return, whereas a stock or an ETF doesn't have that. Now, nothing is without risk completely. However, inherently, bonds are less risk than stocks or ETFs. So it's a good portion of your pie, in my opinion, to set and forget. Now, I view investments, especially retirement, as set it and forget it. All of those will hopefully make you money without you really having to do much besides allocating thoughtfully. You really just let your money work for you and let the art of compounding do its thing. Now, you could be wondering, should I start investing? Should I wait till I have more money? Definitely not. You can start investing with as little as a couple of dollars, and with the art of compounding, there really is no time like the present. Compounding interest means you earn money on your principal, so whatever amount you bought the bond, stock, ETF for, as well as the interest or gains along the way. For example, if you invest $1,000 today in a high yield savings account, which right now has a 4.5% annual interest, in 10 years, you'll have $1,560. If you invest that $1,000 in the S&P 500 and it returns as it has an expected amount of 10% annually, you could have $2,700. And the difference just grows bigger and bigger the longer your money is left there, because you're earning interest or gains on that principal, as well as the interest or gains that you're earning along the way. Now getting into that cash money or even shorter term. So to pay for, a vacation, a plane ticket, a coffee, rent, and so on. So you can see that that's total 18% of my pie. I only keep 2% of my total in my everyday checking and savings. That's what I use to pay rent, pay my credit card, and so on. I will say that I'm fortunate that I do not have any debt, and I do pay off my credit card a couple times a month just to keep it that way. I keep slightly more in a high yield savings. That's 14% of my total pie. This is basically in between of everyday money and long-term lockup. In traditional savings, you make pennies by keeping your money there. In high yield savings, you get monthly interest to keep your money there. And right now, most annual interest is about 4.5% for a high yield savings account. Meaning if you put $10,000 in there, the bank will have paid you $450 by the end of the year. Inflation last year, as we talked about, was around 4%. So by only keeping your money in a traditional savings account that doesn't pay you any meaningful interest, your money's actually losing value. Now, you can't make more than a handful of withdrawals a month, so you can't use this as your everyday, checking or savings as designed. However, it's a great place to keep a bulk of your savings, in my opinion, because it is working for you. If you're wondering how much to keep in your savings, the rule of thumb is between 3 and 6 months of your monthly expenses, just in case that predictable income stream gets stopped or interrupted, like layoffs or you get sick. However, that could be increased if you're saving for a big purchase purchase like a house or a car or something. Last but not least, I have 2% of my total in CDs or certificates of deposits, which are fixed term accounts with a fixed interest rate. They basically lock your money up for a set period of time, for instance, a year or even 5 years, depending, at a set interest rate, and let your money compound, as we talked about, until that CD matures. While this one is technically a cash equivalent, it's not nearly as quick to access as the others in this category. That was a lot of information and it'll get quicker, but I just want to start to point out that what has really worked for me is having my money make money in pretty risk-averse ways, like bonds, high-yield savings, ETFs, rather than doing things like day trading and the like. In my opinion, investing shouldn't be some adrenaline rush. It should be well thought out with a comfortable level of risk. Moving on to my paycheck allocations. Again, I get a set paycheck every 2 weeks, so it's a little bit easier to allocate than irregular income. Up here, I have my pre-tax monthly pay. You can see of my monthly paycheck, Uncle Sam takes about 31% out. I contribute 11% to my 401k. Again, those pre-tax dollars go in there rather than a Roth IRA, and my employer matches some of that contribution. 2% I contribute to an HSA, which is pre-tax money you can use toward medical expenses like copays, glasses, physical therapy, and so on. And 1% goes to pre-tax transit contribution, meaning I can spend pre-tax dollars to take the subway. All of the pre-tax deductions are offered through my employer, just different benefits I had to enroll in. If you're wondering, does my employer even offer those? I'd say ask. It could be your manager, HR. Chances are they have them and just no one's really talking about it. Now, 55% of my total paycheck is what finally gets deposited into my checking account. Now, I've broken out some of the bigger spending areas like rent, utilities, groceries, and so on. But what I've learned has been the biggest driver of me saving and investing has been setting up monthly auto transfers to my brokerage account as well as to my high yield savings account and not breaking the bank on rent. On a monthly basis, I set up those auto transfers from the account that my paycheck is deposited into to my high yield savings and to my individual brokerage account where I invest in those ETFs, for example. These auto transfers have been the biggest shift for me over the past year or so. Before, at the end of every month, I would basically move over whatever I felt was left over into those accounts. But I found myself making up a lot of excuses like the holidays are coming up or it's getting warm out, I might want to go shopping soon, whatever it may be to stop myself from investing in my future self and saving. The auto transfers now take the decision making out of it, so it's just bucketed in with my monthly expenses and spending. Also, keeping my rent below 40% of my monthly take home has been a lifesaver. Sometimes I hear that it should be about half of your monthly take home, or if you get paid every 2 weeks, one of those paychecks. Now, I've been there. I moved to New York when I was 24, and let me tell you, things were tight. But since then, sticking to a good amount less has been key to making sure I can still travel, get a coffee from a cute coffee shop, go out to dinner, all of those fun things. Now, last but not least, I do get an annual bonus, which I don't actually see much of. I'll get into. 30% is taken out for taxes, and I set up 45% of my bonus to go directly into my 401k. And pretty much anything that gets deposited into my checking account after taxes and my 401k contribution, I put right into my Roth IRA. Now, this is not the most fun way to spend a bonus, and it's not how I've always done it, but I find it makes my budgeting easier because I'm not waiting on a chunk of money every year when bonuses aren't guaranteed. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for being here. I'm still on my way of figuring all of this out, so I'd love to hear in the comments what your takeaways were, any advice that you have, or any other topics that you think would be helpful for us to unpack as we continue on our way.